Greetings and welcome back to the channel. Run when you spot these narcissistic games. Today I'm going to talk about some of the games that are so prevalent in our society today that are, yes, done by the narcissist, but have spilled over and have become common everyday practices for those who aren't even necessarily way down the narcissistic path. I'm talking about this a lot recently, but narcissism has so infiltrated the world and the reason is, guys, narcissistic traits are evil traits. That's what it means. Narcissistic people do evil things. Narcissists do evil things. These are reflective of the devil, the traits of Satan. So the worse someone is as a person, the more of these things they're going to do. But it's become way more prevalent today than ever because people are coached to do these things. People do these things because of social media and supply rampant galore, dating sites rampant galore. People are playing way more toxic games than they ever have, and they're being justified more than they ever have. When I say this, I'm serious as a heart attack. Most people today are doing these things that I'm going to talk about. If you are in a relationship now and it's quirky and weird and you're sensing it's narcissistic, which is probably why you're here, or you are talking to someone new or you're going to down the road, you have an excellent chance of seeing these things happen. And when you do, run for your life. Don't don't sit around and think it's a coincidence. Don't explain it away as a testing game or something else. When you see these things, and maybe not instantly one time, but when you start to see a pattern, shortly you will, a pattern of this, run away, get away. First one is people who bait you or baiting tactics. So, for instance, these people will start fights out of thin air. Everything is absolutely fine. Nothing has happened. You might even think the relationship's going really well. You're having a great day, you've had great days, maybe even a great week or two, and out of nowhere, poof, thin air, a fight has emerged over nothing. And you're racking your brain, these are mind games, you're racking your brain thinking, what exactly is it that I did? Like, did I say, there was that, maybe they took that the wrong way. I did say this, but I didn't think there was anything, there was no meat on that bone. Like, and then you're going to rack your brain. And the answer is, if you really can't think of it, or you're starting to try to think, well, maybe I said this, maybe they took this the wrong, then that means they're baiting you. It's a baiting tactic. They want to start a fight out of thin air because these people are unstable and too much stability is painful for them. They thrive in chaos. They might tell you that. I've heard it. I thrive in chaos because they need it. They need things to go poorly. If it's going very well for very long, they can't handle it. That's not their environment. They hate everything that a good person loves because they're evil. So they want to fight you just to cause chaos, just to get in your mind, maybe as an excuse to go do things that they shouldn't do, and they can justify it because, well, we're fighting, so I can go talk to this person. There's a million reasons they might do it, but that's one of them. They might do little things like accuse you of being in a bad mood. Out of nowhere, you're fine, nothing's wrong, you're good. Man, you're grumpy today. You're really in a bad mood today. And you're thinking, what? And you play because you don't know, if you don't know what they're doing, you play along. Well, I didn't think I was. What did I do? You're just grumpy. You're sour today. And you're thinking, what did I do? Again, it's games. And the reality of it is they'll push you until you finally are grumpy or you're finally like on edge with them because you're like, stop, I didn't do anything. And they cause a little bit of, they elicit a little bit of reactive abuse. So that's one way they'll do it. Or just accuse you of different things that simply aren't true to get you stirred up. It's baiting techniques. Other things they'll do. Suddenly they're just aloof or they're pouting. You know what it's like when someone clearly has some kind of problem and they're not telling you. Well, the narcissist and other people who are now so narcissistic are going to do these things to play with your mind. If I'm kind of cold or I'm just real quiet today, he'll chase after me. She'll chase after me. They're going to make you question, what's wrong? What happened? I'm fine. Nothing. I'm fine. What's wrong with you? These are the little games they'll play to bait you into interactions that never should have been. It's also gaslighting. It's a form of gaslighting because they're creating problems and projecting problems onto you that don't exist at all. Maybe in their tortured, whipped up, stirred up minds they exist, but they don't for you. And they're going to create problems for you that don't exist and make you doubt yourself and doubt your reality and play all these little games. So, guys, if someone is doing these sorts of things, if you find that they're creating fights out of nowhere, they're accusing you of being in a bad mood or other similar things, they're suddenly just cold with you, pouting, they've got a stick up their butt for no reason, and they're telling you, I'm fine, I'm good, and they're not communicating, guys, don't mess with these people. Run when you see that game. Another one, huge one that's really occurred to me recently, and it's one of the number one reasons why people can't break away from toxic individuals, is because they've been future faked out of their pants. These people know every little string to pull because we want stability and we want to think that somebody's going to be around tomorrow and next week and next month and next year. We want so badly to, because we just want a stable, healthy relationship, reciprocal. We want so badly for people to be there that they feed right into that and they know we want it. So you might be sharing with them as you get kind of closer, things that bother your son or your daughter, stuff they might be struggling a little bit with, and they eat that stuff up. And they might say things like, well, she's so beautiful. I don't know why she struggles with this. Well, I'll start building her up. I'll start building her up and we'll get her back on track. We'll build her and encourage and get her confidence going. As if it's going to be this ongoing process that just goes on. And so you think that person's going to be around. No, they're not. Um, they might say things, I can't wait to see your child grow up. I can't wait to see what he or she is like over the course of years, how they mature, how they go through their teenage emotions. And I can't wait to see those things. And we're eating it up because it's like, okay, they're going to be there. That means if they're going to be there to see my child grow up, they're going to be in our lives. No, they're not. They just want you to think that. They do things like this on the regular. It might be near Christmas, as it is now, coming up. And they might say, you know, I was really thinking, we don't have time this year, but for next Christmas, why don't we go rent a little cottage somewhere, or let's go on a day trip to this place. I've heard it's got a lot of Christmas stores and great decorations. Of next year for Christmas we should really hang this as an ornament, or we should do these, or and of course, what's that supposed to make you think? There's gonna be a next Christmas together. They just float these things out there on a whim. It's like it really matters to them, and it really matters to us when we hear it, but it means nothing to them in reality. They're floating those things out there to make you think you have a future together. They'll say things like, I'll be really interested to see what happens down the road with our discussions. I'm interested to see where this goes. I'm really fascinated to see what comes up in the future. You might go to an event with them. They invited you to something that's special to them. Could be any number of things. So I won't throw it out there, but I may or may not have experience with this. You were invited to what seems to be a really special, once a year event that's near to them, their family. It's got special significance, and you go. And you're like, wow, they invited me into this. And they might say something like, well, next year when we're doing this, or you might have a special shirt that you wear to the event. And maybe it's a little snug, and they'll say, well, next year we'll get you a bigger one. There was never going to be a next year. And they knew that. Unless everything went just the way they wanted it to go and they got everything they wanted, every single thing was going just their way all the time, and you were being diminished and degraded and devalued, and you were buying into the relationship, just like we all did with the narcissist. Unless that was the case, next year was never going to happen. But they throw those things out there because it's a way of future faking you. And guys, the future faking is one of the hardest things to get over after the relationship ends because they painted a picture for you. You saw a future with them. You saw a next Christmas. You saw a next trip. You saw them supporting, encouraging your child as she grew up or he grew up. So when all of that is gone, it's like the rug just gets pulled right out from under you and you just face plant because all those things you thought were going to happen were never going to happen. And they knew it. If you have someone building these kind of fantasies up with you, but they're inconsistent and they're just not there. You know they're half in. They're just throwing these things out. Run, run, run from these narcissistic games. Another one, very obvious, but it has to always be mentioned. When someone begins to bring other individuals into the mix, they're talking about an ex too much or exes too much. They're comparing you to things that others have done for them. They're comparing their friendship or relationship in some other way to another friendship or relationship. Saying, you give them compliments and they might say, well, the best compliment I ever got was from a person I dated years ago. Now, wait a minute. I just gave you a really nice compliment and your response was, well, the nicest one I've got was from years ago. That's triangulation. That's just an example, but it's a good one because that person is diminishing you, and it's also a game. Because when they start to do those things, what do you think? When you give someone a nice compliment and they compare it to somebody else's compliment that was better, what is that telling you to do? Raise that bar. You need to really work on your compliments. I may have heard that. Some of you might have, or similar. They're telling you what you're offering them isn't good enough. It's not as good as someone else, and you need to raise your bar. And that's the whole thing with the narcissist and people's expectations in general today, which are narcissistic, is that the bar always gets raised. It's never, ever, ever enough for people. You could check 19 of 20 boxes that they have in their head. Tall and handsome and make good money and nice house and loving, caring, supportive, faithful, physically, whatever. You could check 19 of 20 boxes for many people out there today, and that won't be enough. And guess what? If you are the unicorn that checks 20 of 20 boxes, it still won't be enough. They'll make more boxes, or they'll diminish the ones you do check. Games, games, games. Here's a good one. People who end conversations with a dig. Maybe not just end, but they'll throw digs in on a otherwise really fruitful conversation. But they love to end with these because that's what leaves you hanging. And as I've been told and I've seen over the years, that leaving you hanging feeling is done simply to obtain power and control. They will just tell you that sometimes. I like to leave people hanging. I like to leave people unsettled. I like to put them on their heels because it gives me a little bit of control. Heard it. It is how people function. It's how they operate today. And as I've said already, most people are doing these things. It's not a few. I've heard people, I'll comment on different videos, and people will get on and say, bruh, you've been hanging out with the wrong people. Bruh, you've been trying to date the wrong people. What's bruh? And you're like, you kind of just want to slap these people upside the head. I'm sorry, but you kind of do. Because you're like, you clearly haven't had to deal with this. And you don't understand that this is how the majority of people today operate. You run into narcissistic people over and over and over and over. Why? Because there's so many of them. Because there's so many of them out there. Sorry, guys, I'm getting a little bit worked up, but this bothers me when it happens to me, and it bothers me that it happens to you guys, and I want to avoid this stuff. Run when you see it. So they're going to end conversations with a dig. It's going really well. Like, this is one of the nicest conversations we've had. It's, whether it's text or in person or whatever. And let's just say you're texting. Awesome conversation all evening. You're getting closer with the person maybe. And then you say something, just anything that's going along with the conversation, and they'll just say, gee, thanks, sarcastically. And you're like, gee, thanks. What are you talking about? Did I say something wrong? Because when someone says that, it means that you've somehow insulted them. Or they might say, wow, that's nice. And those things leave your head spinning because you're like, I don't think I said anything. But then what do? They won't give you an explanation. They're just going to say, night. You built this whole conversation up and it was going so well. And then you didn't even say anything wrong. Kind of gets back to the baiting thing, but this is leaving you hanging. Ending conversations with a dig. They'll say these weird little things that just leave you unsettled, that just rub you the wrong way on purpose. And then, guess what? They got to go. Or it's bedtime, which it probably isn't, but they're doing that to leave you wondering. Guys, that's a game. If you're noticing that someone is throwing comments in there to put you on your heels or to leave you in a place of questioning and wondering, run. Got to understand that one of the narcissist's primary weapons, and this is overarching, this encapsulates a lot of stuff they do, is to leave people in mystery mode. They want you wondering why they did this, why they said this, if you did something wrong. They want you confused. The more they can leave you wondering, the more power they have over you. And that's all that it comes down to. So if you get the overall feeling, this person is trying to leave me bewildered, I always end up confused with what they meant or how the conversation went, or it seemed good, but then there was that, and terrible signs, red flags, gamesmanship. Last one for this video. Gotta mention it because it's become one of my biggest things, if not the biggest. Ghosting. Do you realize how many people ghost other people today? And what is a ghost? Well, it's where they just disappear, like a ghost. Things are building and going in a good direction, and then poof, they're gone. Just had a guy reach out to me about this recently, and it's something I have experienced very personally, repeatedly. You are building something with a person, and it's seemingly going so well. Great conversations, maybe you even saw each other, and then inexplicably, from nowhere, they're gone. They Caspered you. Why would anyone do this? Well, get online and see all the wonderful dating coaches that exist out there, and this is what you're going to hear 95% of the time. Man, if she's all of a sudden just distant, it was going really well, and then she just pulls back and disappears. She's testing you, bro. She's testing you. She wants to see what you're going to do. How are you going to react? And if you're chasing her and you're thirsty for her, that tells her that everything that you need to. She's going to diss you, man. She's gone. She's gone, bro. You got to pass this test. She goes cold, you go cold. That, my friends, is a game. It's not testing. It's not something so they can see what they want to see. They did that single-handedly for no other reason than to gain the upper hand and to control you. You had great text messages, and boom, 3 days in a row, you hear nothing back. You maybe worked things up for several weeks, great conversations, and you're sharing pictures, and then you have a date and it goes great. Then you have another date and it seems to go really well, and then gone. They're gone. That's a game. It's not a test. It's not for anything else, guys. Believe me on this. You got to trust me on it. If nothing else, hear me on this. If you are dealing with a person now or in the future where things are seemingly going well and they just vanish, you need to vanish. Not to prove a point to them, but you need to vanish because that person is unequivocally no good. Unless they can come back to you and say, here's what happened. I had a death in the family. This happened with my child. I'm so sorry. They have an actual, legitimate, authentic explanation for what happened, and it makes sense. And it's not a recurring thing. Unless that's the case, you need to run. Because I'll tell you, I promise you this person is doing it as a game. They do have other people on the hook. They did it for probably no other reason than to see if you'll chase after them and you'll thirst and pine for them. And then they really have the upper hand. And no one, and I mean absolutely no one, that is of value, that is good, that's a real person, is going to risk playing the ghosting game for any reason. I don't care what it is. If you have genuine interest in someone and you are a person of value, you're not going to just allow them to slip through the cracks. You're not going to allow that relationship or budding relationship a chance to just disappear. If you are dealing with a real person, trust me on this. I know it. I've experienced it. It's totally different to deal with a real person, a genuine person, especially a person of God, versus one of these zillion 95% gamesters out there. The way they communicate is different. The way that they're straightforward with you. There's no guessing games. You're not going to get ghosted once. Not once, not one time. I promise you. Anyone who will ghost you one time, you need to leave, lest they have that really viable explanation that makes perfect sense. A real person, a real one, and especially a person of faith and the light, they won't ghost you. They won't pull back. They're not going to bait you. They're not going to future fake you. They're not going to bring other people unnecessarily into the relationship. A real one, guys, will do none of these things. These are the narcissistic games that are so prevalent in our culture today. So please be aware if you're dealing with any of the things I just mentioned, trust and believe you need to get out of it. You need to leave. If you start to see this in a new person, any of them, get out, leave. This is a gamester. You're dealing with a narcissist or a narcissistic individual who's got a lot of the traits. So understand, in closing, a person of the light, a genuine, authentic individual, you will know the difference. They will deal direct with you. They're secure in themselves. They're straight shooters. You won't be wondering, will I hear from them again? Will it take them 12 hours? Am I going to get ghosted? Are they dealing with other people? You won't have to worry about any of that. You won't have any doubt about it. Promise you. So, guys, I want you to be safe. I want you to be good in the things you're getting into. And you start to see these narcissistic games, run. All right, guys, come at you with another one here soon. Hope this was enjoyable. Drop comments below. Thanks to new subscribers and new commenters. Look forward to hearing more from you. In the meantime, I'll think of the next one to do, and God bless.